This is David McKenzie at the Sacred Heart Home interviewing 86-year-old Lewis O'Connor, formerly of Clinton. The date is July 25th, 1983. What can you tell me about your ancestors, where they came from?
Well, my great-grandfather came from County Kerry, Ireland, and he settled in the next farm to where my home was, and he settled right in the forest, a spring below, and he had a family of 11 at least that I can name, and he died when the oldest, my grandfather John O'Connor, was 16, and he had to take the responsibility of raising those brothers and sisters. Then he got married, and he had 14 of a family, 7 boys and 7 girls. My father was the oldest, James O'Connor, and the farm alongside belonged to Alexander Smith. He was a well-to-do man, a very big, great man to work. He built the Kilton Mill, the sawmill and grist mill, and put in the dam at that time. He was killed in the mill, and the sons had to sell the place out, and my father was in Colorado at the time for 8 years, and he sent the money home and bought the old Smith farm, and that's my home. See, then my mother was from the next district, Graham's Road, Bridget Cash, and her mother, her father died when she was very young. I never knew my grandfather on my mother's side, but they came. My grandmother Cash came from her people came from the County Monaghan, and she married James Cash, and she had 9 boys and 2 girls. My mother was one of them, and shut off.
Okay.
Times in Ireland were so bad that they had to leave, and it was only the able-bodied could leave because it was a very rough passage across. It was an open sailing ship, and some of them were lost. And they come to this country that nearly all the Irish were very poor, and the land they took up belonged to the landlords, and they paid quit rents to the landlords for years. My grandfather, John O'Connor, paid rent for years. Finally, the government bought the English landlords, bought them out, and then they established the credit foncier. It was money from France that they could borrow money to pay for their farms. I can remember my grandfather paying to the credit, what they call the credit foncier. It was a French organization that was paying Charlottetown, and that's the Irish. The Irish were very poor, and they had to take the poorer land.
Yeah. So, did they settle? Did they all settle together when they come over from Ireland?
Oh no, there was. I wrote up something about that would be of interest to you.
Yeah, maybe I'd like to see it.
Yeah. I was only one of my family, father, mother, and we were. My father, before when I was very small, got into the horse business. I was brought up we had a wonderful horse market before cars.
Yeah.
We supplied New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, the lumber woods, and cities and towns. We supplied them with horses. And when automobiles and trucks come, we lost that.
Did horses play a big part in the lives of the people?
Yes, horses did. Horses in them days played a big part. An awful lot of the farmers raised a foal every year. They had a horse to sell every year. That was the cash crop. Like the spring of the year, you couldn't ship a horse till the car ferry come, because the boat would be tied up for a month.
Oh, yeah.
You couldn't ship. And when navigation opened in the spring, the horse buyers from St. John, Halifax, and all over would come to the island. They were from the cities, and they dealt in horses. He supplied horses to truckmen. That was their business. And they'd come and buy up a lot of horses. In my father's case, most of them, one man would come. It started with one man at first. Happened to come to the island, my father had, and that was back before 1900. And he went home and he told others, and that spread, you see, and they'd write to my father for a horse, generally a general purpose horse of around 12 to 1300 as a rule, or everyone drivers, then good drivers was in demand. And a farmer that kept a mare, and there was some bigger farmers that had like 2 farms, 200 acres of land, kept 2 brood mares. They had 1 or 2 horses to sell every spring. See, and I can remember first, when I was very young, the price of a horse, of a general purpose horse, that's the average. There's no set price for a horse. When 2 men meet, they establish the price.
Yeah. And
no set of pound or anything. It's according to his build and his appearance, his age. And when they sold a horse for $200, that financed them for the year. And they were, as a rule, if they didn't drink it, they were prosperous. See, some of them drank.
Yeah. Was there a lot of drinking when your great grandfathers, when they come over from Ireland? Was there a lot of
liquor was they weren't the temperament. A lot of them. See, the Irish, all races, but the Irish in particular, that was one of the curses of the Irish race.
Yeah.
I think you know that.
Yeah. Heavy drinkers?
Yeah, they drink to excess and want to fight.
Yeah. Speaking of fighting, was there a lot of fighting between the Irish and the Scots when they Scots?
Oh yes, yes, there was rivalry. There was rivalry between, you see, at horse races and tea parties. There'd always be a fight. Those fellows that went there for that purpose.
Yeah. I've heard a lot about tea parties.
Oh,
What can you describe a typical tea party?
Oh yes, you see, especially in the Catholic parishes, you see, built a church, and they'd have a tea party every year. A tea party. It finally developed to picnics. Well, the tea party started in the morning. They served dinners, and then they served suppers. You see, and they had a saloon where you get beer. And the beer was fairly strong then. There was no prohibition in the early days. And the saloon was talking. There was a booth for dancing. You'd pay so much, 5 or 10 cents a couple. That was the only place for a fight to start. Then dancing spot. And all fights on the ground. All it was no good unless there was a fight. Everybody run to see it.
Were the Irish, did they have any guys that were supposed to be better fighters than other people?
There was fellas that was noted for fighting.
Yeah.
And there'd be more than one. There'd be a crowd. That's pretty well died out.
Yeah.
Then finally now, and then it used to be, now they have picnics, but there's not as many picnics as there used to be.
No.
And there used to be, some of the tea parties, there'd be a special train run down to St. Peter's Bay now from our place in Kensington. A special train would run down. There'd be their flight coming back on the train.
That still happens.
Yeah.
What other social get-togethers would they have besides tea parties and dancing?
Oh, well, they used to make money. They used to have pie socials and basket socials.
Oh, yeah.
Basket socials. See, a woman would make a basket, and they'd auction them. And pie socials, a pie, they auction whoever bid the highest. So the boys would run it up on a fellow who's going with the girl. They'd run it up on him.
Yeah.
But he'd have to pay the price, and then of course whoever bought it come and they'd have lunch out of the basket.
Yeah, that's good.
And now they have picnics, and now it's lobster supper.
Yeah.
And supper now. I listen to the news, and a meal costs $8, $9, $10. And in the old days, you 50 cents.
Yeah.
You got those tea packs and
Yeah.
that was a big price.
You were talking about drinking. Where did the liquor come from back then?
Oh, they used to sell liquor. They would sell liquor at every village and place to sell liquor. Then the Scott Act come in. See, the Scott Act come in. That's for a while. Then it got down that you couldn't. Prohibition came in. Got down that you had to have a script from a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
You see, and of course there was always bootleggers selling on the side. Well, they'd be raided and fined and think all that sort of thing. And there still is.
Yeah.
You see, and anyhow, prohibition. They kept putting teeth in the prohibition laws until straight in the United States, that made the moonshiners.
Yeah.
And the bootleggers.
Yeah. Rum runners.
Yeah, rum runner. Oh yes, the rum running here. Prohibition's rum running got ships standing off the 3-mile limit with kegs of rum, cases of whiskey and everything. And the fishing boats go out and bring it in. See?
So Prohibition never slowed anything down too much.
Well, they had to. They get government control. It didn't make any difference whether it was government prohibition or government control. It was all government control anyhow.
Mm.
See, and it's a problem yet. And liquor then as was sold was full strength. Now it's cut, and the price of liquor. I used to drink, I used to smoke. I give up both because it's only nonsense, a waste of money. Anyone that's buying liquor today and it's only half strength, paying $12 to $15, they got more money than brains. That's maybe a hard statement to make, but it's true.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't get the good stuff anymore, I don't think, can you?
Well, you used to be able to buy 40 overproof rum, but I don't think you can buy it now. Oh, everything has to be cut. Whiskey, what is it? It can't be over 30%. See, it's half water. It used to be in the old days, you bought a bottle of liquor and it was full strength. If you took a good drink of it, you'd feel it for quite a while. But now, the stuff you have now, you have to take a lot of it, and all it'll do is give you an appetite for the second drink. And now if you get the second one, you want the third one. But in the old days, you give somebody a good drink of liquor, they'd feel good for a while.
Yeah.
And the stuff now, as a rule, unless there's somebody talking to you, makes you dopey, sleepy.
Yeah.
That was my experience with it. And I think you find that's true.
Mm.
Do you get that impression from anyone else?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Well, that. Of course, all races, liquor was a problem. But I think the Irish race more in particular, they weren't, as a rule, they weren't the temperament.
Was it because they were poor, or maybe was it because they were poor because they drank?
They were always used to that. See, they were always used to it. Well, all races were.
Yeah.
Good God, in England, no countries. In England, there was no restriction on drinking at all unless it was late years. And I always heard less drunkenness. It used to be there were saloons. There were saloons in this country where you could go in and have a drink. That had to be done away with. Then you had to buy a bottle. But it's a great liquor is a curse. It's all right to be sociability and all that, but you have to know how to handle it. My father could handle liquor. He mostly always had a drop. He didn't give it to everybody come in, but then it was full strength. Somebody come in, he'd give them a good drink. He wouldn't bother. He said, which was right, there's no use of giving them a little. Give them a drink that's something that they feel. They're a waster. That was right. But in the old days, you give them a drink of good liquor, you'd feel good for quite a while.
Wouldn't have to drink a gallon of it.
No. And you take tobacco, your cigarettes is a curse.
Yeah.
When I was a young fella, anyone that's cigarettes couldn't get a job. The fingers were yellow.
Yeah.
Now, you take a family where the man and the woman and all the family is smoking, costs a pile of money.
Yeah.
Then they got more wages.
Yeah. $2 a package now.
Yeah, well, the minister at Ottawa, Mrs.
Yeah.
She's going to stop them smoking cigarettes. Put 60 cents on.
You think so?
Yes, it'll stop some.
You think?
Oh yeah. Oh, it's foolish habit anyway.
Yeah. I agree. I don't.
It's all the way you think about it.
Yeah.
I used to smoke a pipe, and I love cigars. And I quit the pipe, and I went away across Canada to a lot of meetings, and I'd buy a pack of 5 cigars. But I give that up. Now I wouldn't take a cigar if you offered me one. Wouldn't go. It's all mind over matter. That applies to everything. We all, it's find the happy medium. That's the problem today, the problem with nations, with everybody. Find the happy medium. There's very few of us can do it. I ain't saying that I can do it, but I quit those things.
Yeah, that's more than a lot of people can say.
Well, it's only the way you think about it.
But, okay, getting back to the Irish, what about religion? Did religion play a big part?
Oh yes, the Irish, you see, Ireland was supposed to be a land of saints and scholars. The Irish stuck, see, in England, in Henry VIII and Queen Elizabeth, they'd done their best to stamp the Catholic religion out, but they couldn't do it in Ireland. See, Ireland never gave in. And then there'll never be peace in Ireland while there's 2 governments. You see, because both sides are Irish. It's a religious war.
Did they bring the religion over to the island with them?
Oh yes, the Irish, she was chiefly Roman. There were some Scots Catholics, but not. And of course, the French people were Catholics.
Yeah. Did the war between the Irish and the Protestants and the Catholics continue when they came here? Did they fight here?
No, not as a rule. I was brought up in Clinton. There was 4 Catholic families, and this still is. And the best friends I got is my old Protestant neighbors. Very fine people, Christian people. See, in the old days, some of them, they didn't swear, they didn't drink, they didn't use tobacco, they wouldn't play cards, they wouldn't dance. But then that passed away. Hardly they were very fond of cards, playing auction. See?
Is there a lot of holidays celebrated in Ireland? That's something I don't know. Is there a lot of holidays and stuff celebrated in Ireland?
I can't tell you. I guess perhaps I've read, but just at the moment I can't tell you.
I was just wondering.
Well, you see, they kept all the holidays.
Yeah. They bring them over with them?
Oh yes. The holidays was more attention paid to holy days than there is today. Of course, we have the holy days. There's not as many.
Yeah.
There's the 1st of November is All Saints or All Souls Day. The 8th of December was the Feast of the Annunciation or Immaculate Conception. Christmas and New Year's and the 6th of January, Old Christmas.
Uh-huh.
They're still holidays, but there's not as much stress put on them as there used to be.
Old Christmas, what's Old Christmas?
Well, that I know now. I'd have to think. That was somewhere where they took the infant Jesus. Old Christmas. I didn't know. No, I'd have to think.
Do they just take the day off, or how do they
Well,
celebrate?
it's a holiday just same as Sunday. You're supposed to hear Mass, and you see that's the Catholics, and you see it's the church, the Ten Commandments and the Golden Rule, and you can't beat the Ten Commandments.
Mm-hmm.
You see. And the Golden Rule, do to others as you would be done by. And it's what the Ten Commandments gets badly broken.
By everybody.
Yeah, but it's a good thing to have in mind. You can't go very far astray. Keep the Ten Commandments.
It'd be some world if everybody lived by the Ten Commandments.
Well, there wouldn't be any wars.
No.
War, you know, war is a very senseless thing.
Yeah. It's a political thing. Isn't
Well,
it?
it always was. People want to gain power. Always was somebody. Now it's the Russians. And the only defense that we have, Canada has, it used to be before the First War, was the British. Britain. Britain ruled the waves. We learned that in school.
Yeah.
The sun never went down on the British Empire.
Yeah.
Now, you see, which was true.
Yeah.
And now our protection is the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And there's people raising hell in demonstrations about the cruise missile. That's the only thing the Russians understand.
But
If the states, it's wrong, but if the United States don't have the weapons to match Russia, Irish immigrants that came to Prince Edward Island from Ireland had to be strong and able-bodied to withstand the very rough passage across the Atlantic Ocean. Some died or were lost at sea. At first they traveled in small open boats, later in much larger vessels, taking about 2 months to make the ocean journey. They landed at different ports along the north side of Prince Edward Island: Tignish, Alberton, Malpeg Bay, New London Harbour, Rustico. French predominated in this area, only a few Irish families in this area. Cove Head, Brackley, Savage Harbour, Morel, St. Peter's Bay, and on to East Point. From there they also landed on the south side, which bordered the Northumberland Strait, back to the North Cape, the place of commencement. From these various ports all around the island, the Irish settlers moved inland near a spring in the virgin forest and built a log cabin. Agents of the English landlords collected yearly rent. In the early part of the 18th century, the government bought the land from the landlords. Arrangements were made for gaining possession of the land by making payments to a French company from France, who had loaned the money to buy the land in the first place. Kincora and Kelly's Cross are two areas, among others, that have always remained Irish. The land was cleared by axe and seeded with buckwheat, flour, oatmeal, potatoes and fish were the staples of life at this time. And in these hard times, big families were raised, and in turn they developed farms, and eventually Prince Edward Island became noted for its best Irish cobbler potatoes in the world, and its mixed farming. Time out for a little break in our story. One day, two Irish sisters were driving out in the country roads of Alberta when suddenly the car stopped dead. They were out of gas. As it was 3 miles from a gas station, they were happy to see a ranch house a few hundred yards up the road. As they approached the farmer, he was quite willing to share some gas from his 10,000 gallon tank. The problem was to find a small container to transport the gas back to the car of the sisters. Eventually they noticed an old chamber which had been cast aside from the bathroom when the bathroom had been installed. They filled it and ever so carefully carried it back and poured it into the car without spilling as much as a drop. In the meantime, unnoticed by the sisters, a car had stopped and was watching the procedure very carefully. The driver, an orange one, remarked to the sisters, "I never thought too damn much of your religion, but I sure as hell admire your faith." Early in the 19th century, the Irish and other Catholics were discriminated against to the point where they were not allowed to vote. In most places they were forced to settle in the hills and the poorer farm areas of the island. Now we come to a second yard. A farmer's wife was baking bread, and opening the kitchen door, she called to her 12-year-old son to bring her in a stick of wood. He straightened up and said, "My dear mother, the grammatical portion of your education has been sadly neglected. You should have said, 'Thomas, my son, transport from that recumbent collection of combustible material to the threshold of this edifice one of the curtailed extremities of a defunct log.'" In 1940, from 1830 to 1840, there was a great famine in Ireland for 2 successive years. The potato crop, the staple food at the time, failed. The population of 8 million dwindled to half of that through starvation. The government unable to help. The fact is they wouldn't. And those who could cross the ocean to America into a life of freedom. 2 serious problems beset the Irish race: an addiction to liquor and an inability to agree among themselves. Failing to present a united front increased their difficulties. All this by a fellow with a big O in front of his name, who was very proud of it. There will never be peace in Ireland while there are 2 governments. In the Irish Free State, the minority enjoy the same rights as the majority. However, such is not the case in Ulster. Peace will never come about by extremists like Ian Paisley on one side and the IRA members on the other. Prejudice, hatred, bombing and killing will never lead to peace. More detailed information and dates may be obtained from church records and from the Legislative Library.
This is Karen Doyle. I'm interviewing Lewis O'Connor at the Sacred Heart Home. The date is May the 10th, 1982.
Every river is all sailing vessels, and there was shipbuilding, even some of the creeks. The shipbuilding, they built fishing boats, fishing boats or sailboats, and they built schooners, and they built 3 and 4 masted, mostly 2-masted schooners, and 100 tons or so. But they'd load them with grain and take them to England or Europe, and they'd sell the grain on the ship off. But it was a great. See, when steam, I put that business up on the island here in 1870 or 73, we joined Confederation. I joined Confederation in 73. The reason the first meeting I had here in 1864. That's the first meeting. Sir John A. MacDonald and all met up with the. And I'll tell you another thing I perhaps should know. If you want to get dates, the library up there would be a great place to get them, and all that sort of thing. And the population in 73 was about 110,000, and times got so poor, you see, got so poor that by 1890 it was down to 90,000. The first thing that gave this island an agricultural boost was the cheese factories. Cheese factories the Dominion government sent. He was before my time, before I was born. I was born in 1896. And but in 1890 or 91, the federal government sent Professor Robertson down here. I did know, my memory is not near as good as it was. I did know he was either Deputy Minister of Agriculture or he was the minister. I'm not sure which, but he went all over the island lecturing to farmers that there was an unlimited, which at the time there was, an unlimited market for cheese in England, in Low Countries, and to build cheese factories and operate them from the 1st of June to the 30th of October. And the reason why, I know why, I didn't hear this, but I know the reason why, because the farmers used to let the cows go dry, see, and they fed them on straw and turnips. In the winter, spring of the year, they have to go around and lift, get them on their feet. And there was no way, there was nothing. The only way that you could handle it, there wasn't very much milk produced. The cows didn't give very much milk, you see. And the first, they didn't even have creamers. They set it in pans and they skim the cream off and they churn it and sell it to the stores. And a lot of them, there were some good butter makers among them. There were some that weren't. They didn't wash the butter because it was poor product. Well, anyhow, he advised them, and they did. New Perth, John A. Brewer, that was the first factory, first cheese factory. Kensington, our factory, was the next, and it was the biggest on the island. It had a branch factory out in Malta. See, because it was a little far haul. The milk was hauled by horses and wagons. Milk hauler, he'd haul, put the milk out on the stand, put the cans in on the stand, you see, and hauler would come in. He'd generally leave home. He wasn't supposed to leave home till 7 o'clock. We were the first on the route in ours. We were the first. He'd always be there at 6 o'clock because he wanted to get in all the wagons, you see, and if he was last, he'd have to wait a long time. And then they brought back the whey after the cheese was made. You see, the whey was actually, they brought the whey back out to feed the pigs, placing the milk. Well, that was the first thing that gave this island agricultural lift. You see, then there was good times when I was interested in this because after the factories got established, there was one in later years, there was one at Emerald, there was one at Stanley Bridge, and there was different places. I forget now how many factories there was over the island, you see. They formed the Dairymen's Association. John A. Doerr was the first president. And around about, I was about 1905, I was about 8 or 9 years old, the Dairymen's Association got a grant from the government, and they offered prizes to the farmer that would supply the most milk and butter fat per cow in the 5 months. You had to have 5 cows. You'd have 6. You were allowed 1 for your own use. Well, all right. We were in the horse business with the father, but and there were just ordinary cows, all different breeds. And he applied and led the island for 6 years. See that there was 3 prizes each county, but the father was the highest for 6 years. That people wouldn't believe it. See, but there was an awful lot of work went into that. See, cows weren't allowed to let run on the field. The flies were put in the stable and stuffed to the green feed. That was a lot of work cutting the side. And but then that was the start. There was other men in my time. There was other men come down from Ottawa, advised the farmers to weigh and sample their milk every 10 days and give them, see, for it's preserved from the bottle. Each cow had to have a little bottle for each cow, and have it tested and find out which, all before that, or even after, the farmers, the cow that gave the most milk they thought was the best, which wasn't. Perhaps it was one wasn't given, but she was higher tested, you understand? And the way, and that was the start, around about that time, of the purebred cattle. And it was hereditary. You kept a cow and you bred it to a purebred sire, you see. And the more butterfat was behind the sire and the dam, the better the cow, the offspring, the higher they test in fat. I don't know whether you're interested in this stuff or not. Tell me if you're not. And that was the start. Today, of course, you take the purebred Holsteins and the purebred breeds. There's Holstein cows today. In them days, and even yet, a good 40-pound cow, give 40 pounds a day, was a pretty good cow. Of course, they have them now with records over 100 pounds a day. Well, that was through breeding and all that sort of thing.
When would that be that they started the breeding of?
Well, I tell you, it was around about, I just think it would be around about from 1905 up, you see. The war, the first war, as he started 4th of August 1914, Prince Edward Island, there was good times. There was markets for most everything. Farmers, especially farmers that bought more land than other farms. And they didn't spend the money drinking or that sort of thing. They become fairly prosperous. It was the cheapest place in the North American continent to live in them times. And after the war, in 29, it's just reversed. It's the dearest. It's the dearest today except Newfoundland. See, there was that great change that happened. I had aunts who was married in the States, and they'd come over. Grandfather and grandmother was living on the next farm to us, and they'd come home there, and they'd marvel at how cheap things was for what they had to pay. That's how. Well, a lot of that I got. This way it may surprise you. It was only me and my family. See, and I listened to old people. A lot of people come to our place. And I listened to them talk. And I could see the difference. I had 8 of a family of my own. And I could see the difference in my playing. It was something that I missed. But I have things and I have knowledge. I tell this to a lot of, if I was young again, there's different things I learned from experiences. One thing I would do, I'd keep a diary, I'd have dates. I could write a booklet on a lot of different subjects, but I had no dates. And some Leo McCarthy wanted me to write about the history back in the horse business. Well, I know it, but I had no dates. A diary, where I got that idea was my father. I was married twice. My father-in-law, my first wife's father. He had a diary. He could tell you every year when they started planting, when they finished, and anything of importance went on in the world, and between planting and haymaking, and when they started the hay and when they finished, and anything that happened, all the year. You know, it was a wonderful thing. And another thing is a great thing is a good scrapbook. I've seen people, I didn't keep scrapbook, but I've seen people that had scrapbooks and they weren't worthwhile to go through. They'd cut it. You'd see things in the paper, you know, how to do things that nobody was uncommon. And they had pictures and everything. A good scrapbook is an awful lot of information in a real scrapbook. But that's one thing I would advise anybody to keep a diary that have dates. If you're going to write anything, you've got to have dates. And, I got carpentry here. Well, of course, there was, in the old days, there was the old people, our grandfathers and them, they built the first buildings, you see. And they were cutting down, clearing the land with lumber. And there was mills, which there's not today. There was mills. There was one over in Irishtown, Burlington. There was 3 mills on one stream. You see? And that's where we first, when I was young, the first was the old stones, far wheat was ground to the old stones. And that's when people started using smashed grain to feed pigs or cattle. That's how they crush it before they got crushers. And blacksmithing was, as I told you, a blacksmith, you could take any machine, you break any part, you could take any machine, take the blacksmith, he could fix it. See? And it was all the wagons, everything. There was no, things weren't important. You take even clothes. I can remember when ready-made clothing in the store came. It might have been a little before my time. The shoes on your feet, they didn't have them. They used to be shoemakers. In the country, in the summertime, when they bare feet, in the fall boots, the shoemakers would come and make the shoes. The hides was tanned. There was tanneries on the island. There's none today. See, with all this, the big factories away.
Would you say that the Irish were more involved in one of those activities than they, or were they sort of evenly distributed?
The Irish, you see, were very poor. And some of the others, the Scots and the English came here had money. The Irish were poor. It was a very rough trip across, and it was only a strong, rugged person that could stand it. First to come and open ships, and some of them were lost. And the Irish, you see, in Ireland, they left Ireland because times were tough, and they were poor. And our family, I guess I told you, my great-grandfather settled right in the virgin forest. I guess there was a trail through the woods, but the people then lived at the river, back at the river. That's where the people lived. And as they cleared the land, there was a road from Clinton, Margate to Kensington. There was a road put through, by the government. Then they all moved out to that road, the Clintons. And we're right. Clinton is right next to the County Line Road. Narborough and Margate, we border on is in Prince County.
Would you say that most of the Irish settlers were farmers because they were poor? Like they became farmers?
Yes, that is about all they... Yes, I would... without getting something to it. Yes, there wasn't much there, of course. Oh, there was some of them were tradesmen, you see, they were blacksmiths or carpenters. The majority of them settled on the land. And it was landlords. Landlords were the English landlords who owned the land. It wasn't until, I should know the date. It wasn't until about 1850 or 60. You find that all up that the bought out the landlords. See, there were only tenants. They quit renting it. No, they were very poor. My grandfather, my father was the oldest of 14. And my great-grandfather, he died when my grandfather was the oldest, when my grandfather was 16. And there was 11. I had to write up for some of the grandchildren who was writing up a family tree, and I had to stop and think. And there was 11 in the first family of my grandfather. He really brought up 2 families. There was 11 that I can remember. Maybe I forget some. Then he got married and he had 14 of his own, and he cleared the farm, the land.
Do you remember their names now, the 11?
Well, I'd have to. My memory is failing on me. But well, my grandfather was John, and there's no use it would take me too long. I could think them up, but it would take me too long.
Do you know anything that was that would be unique to the Irish, like things that they did that say the Scottish settlers and the English settlers wouldn't do? Like they were great storytellers.
Well, they all had their personalities. The Irish was noted for wit, you see, and they blame me for that too. Oh, there's something. I was saying, thinking that it's not good before I did it. Sometimes I make a fool of myself. Well, there was one thing about, there was the most typical thing about Irish in Ireland, that they stuck to the faith. See, the King Henry VIII and Elizabeth I and some of the others, they done their best to the Catholic religion, and they conquered Scotland and they conquered Wales, but they couldn't conquer Ireland. Ireland kept fighting them. They hung them and cut the heads off them and everything, but the Irish still kept. And our island is noted for saints and scholars. But there's one thing that the Irish, the hells are fighting among themselves. They can't. There's an awful lot of jealousy in the Irish.
Did you find that?
Perhaps not. I don't know whether anymore. So people are inclined to be jealous anyhow. But the one thing that my own personal experience about the Irish, if you were down and in trouble, they'd do anything to help you. But if you got a little above them, they'd pull you down.
They wanted everybody on an equal.
Or at least the Scotch is more canny. The Irish are quick-tempered. I don't know what you call them. Spontaneous. But a lot of them are erratic. You see, they make you mad, and they make me mad a lot of times.
Did you find the faith, like in your day, did you find that their faith was still quite strong? Even though they had immigrated?
Yeah. For me now, my father, he wasn't. My mother had very strong faith. Her mother before her. I got a little. I wouldn't miss mass. We lived. No, I don't want you to. This. I don't want to make it a personal story. We lived in our parish. We were just a mission of Indian River, and now it's Summerfield. We had a priest of our own, and built a new church. We got one of the nicest little small churches on this island, Summerfield. If you're ever passing the town road to Kensington, it's lovely church. Minerva Cruddy, her uncle was the priest, Father Regnano. He built it, and we lived to the north. We were 3 miles or more, It was a very, very bad Sunday that I wasn't there. And I was the only one from any district. Well, I couldn't get around the roads, but I could go across the field. You see, there was in the winter time, there was always generally a road across the fields, and there was gaps. And it had to be an awful bad storm that I wasn't there. And it was remarked. It was remarked. It was I had said that anything that was cash in it, well, there was cash, wouldn't miss math. You see, others, and I'm not telling you this for any personal reason or anything. There was others living alongside of me, and other Catholics in the state, they weren't there, but I was there. You see, it's just that's I think that's typical of the Irish. That is the rank and file of the Irish. See, they're fairly strong in the faith. Some of them, then you get the odd one that isn't.
I suppose that's what kept them going over the rough times, though.
Oh, yes, it was, yeah, sure. That's, sure.
They were great storytellers, too. Would that be typical of the other
Oh, yes.
other people as well?
I read you the poem, didn't I read the poem when my soul passed away? Yeah.
Do you know where your mother clipped that out of? You said she had clipped them out of
Well,
the paper.
yes. I don't know. It was out of the newspaper. She had those. I used to do a lot of reciting. Couldn't sing. I used to do a lot of reciting, and my mother kind of took it up. But she had those pieces. She had them. See, and when she died, some of the family took them. But I never could find out who took them.
Do you know approximately what date it would be on that one that you read to us?
Oh, I don't know. That would be in the 1800s. See, I don't know.
Were the Irish, were they more party goers, or getting together more so than the English and the Scots?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I don't know. Oh, yes, they were. They were. Oh, sure, they like to dance, of course, all races do. The French in particular. Well, you see, we had the four founding nationalities here: the English, the Scots, the Irish, and the French. Of course, it was the French that first colonized the island. Are you taking this down?
Mm-hmm.
Be careful what I say.
Do you know of any superstitions or anything like that? Did you find the Irish
Oh,
people are very
yeah.
superstitious?
Yes, I don't know about, but they used to talk. Good God, this is terrible. When I was a kid, I was scared to death in the dark. It wasn't right. They tell you things to scare you. You were afraid to go out of the kitchen into a dark room. Afraid to go out traveling. They were scared. This is because you were brought up with that sort of stuff. And, some of them were go tell ghost stories. Now they seem to believe. Oh, man. Yeah, the stories. I'll tell you, an Irish wake. Old fellas that sit all night, who could tell the biggest yarn?
Would they believe in a lot of the things that, or did they know that most of it was just in
When
fun?
they talk, you think they do. I could tell you things that I heard, or even in my times, the way things are today, You wouldn't believe it. Poor had big families. And my father's family was 14, 7 boys, 7 girls. My mother, there was 9 boys and 2 girls. And they were poor and had to work awful hard. Oh, the hard manual labor that there used to be, and I did a lot of it, is taken out by the labor-saving machines. You see? And today, they can't afford it. The people were poor, big families, and in debt. Paying interest, of course, interest rates was lower. Mm-hmm. And today, they can't afford to raise more than 1 or 2. Oh, in my lifetime, I'm in the 86th year. You see, I'll be 86 the 4th day of August coming. And I don't think there ever was a time when there was much change. I see an awful lot of change. And there's a change in the soil too. The change, of course, that's kind of recognized as we lived last year's change in age. Well, the change all started with the automobile, from the horse to the automobile. Everything got going faster. That's the change. Now, I was just reading their bankruptcies. The bankruptcies. Hitler ended the Depression in '39 when he started the war. In 1945, there was nothing to take its place. You see, in the war, the Germans, the farmers, the women and the girls and everybody turned out and they produced the stuff faster than the Germans could sink it, with shortage of help. See, in 1945, and the farm organizations, the Holstein Breeders Association, and the Guernsey and Jersey, they were petitioning the McKinsey King government to do something. McKinsey King come out and he said, is there any one organization? See, there's different farm organizations in different provinces. And Canada is the second largest country in the world with the most resources. But the situation in the Maritimes, and Prince Edward Island in particular, and Newfoundland, is different than Quebec and Ontario. Then the western provinces is different than British Columbia. Mm-hmm. But McKinsey, is there any one organization can speak for agriculture in Canada? They got together and they formed the Canadian Federation of Agriculture. And we had them in each province. I was president here and I was director of the Canadian Federation. And then I was interested in the cooperative movement. You see, people get people together, did a lot in the organization. I was the director for years of the cooperative union of Prince Edward Island. That was the union of all the cooperatives. You see. And then we were a member of the cooperative union of Canada. See, I was president for years. I got out of it. I could have been longer. I got out of it, but when I was president of that, I was director of the Cooperative of Canada. And I attended, you see, the principles of the cooperative movement and the federation is the same. No discrepancy in race, color, and creed. All hands working together for the common good. And it's the 4 nationalities, as I tell you, that established on the island. If they were each one fighting the other, and they're fighting among themselves. This island is a wonderful little place. It could be made away if they learned to work together instead of the individuality. And that's still the problem with us. It's not as much the Irish and the Scots don't stick to the old traditions and ways like they used to.
Were there a lot of the traditions around when you were younger?
Oh, yes,
Are you
yes,
still?
yes, that's been the change.
What ones do you remember that were around then?
Well, people were, you see, when they would come here, people had to be rugged individualists, you see. And the cooperative movement and the Federation managed to change that. Well, all right, you're still an individual, but work together for the common good. You don't make no discrepancy in race, color, or creed. The Catholics were for the Protestants had the majority, still have. But in the old days, there was a day back. My grandfather, when he was born in 1837, they didn't have a vote. See? And the laws has been really relaxed. And oh, there's a wonderful change. And there's a far better feeling between Protestants and Catholics than there was. I'll tell you what done a lot to the Catholics. Now in 1925, the Church Union split them up. See, the Methodists, we were living alongside them, the Methodists, and were very religious people. And the Presbyterians, well, the Presbyterians wouldn't all go. Part of them went in with the Methodists and formed the United Church, but the other is still the Presbyterian. See, the Presbyterians were very straight-laced, and so were the Methodists. They wouldn't do nothing on Sunday. Catholics, you go to Mass and then do anything after.
They weren't as quite straight-laced as the others.
When we were living, there was only 4 Catholic families in Clinton, and there's still only 4.
Really?
But as far as Sunday went, well, you could be taken up still in the law. Still in the law, it's not enforced, but you can be taken up if you're doing anything on Sunday.
Were the 4 families that were Catholic, were they all Irish background?
Yeah.
Did you find any, or hear any stories? You said they were busy fighting back and forth like the Scots and the Irish. Now, did you hear anything about the Irish fighting amongst themselves?
Oh, the devils were fighting.
The different
ones.
ones.
That's what kept Ireland back. They couldn't agree among themselves.
Would it be like the different counties that would fight
Well,
amongst?
in Ireland, it was the same in Ireland. You see, there was different clans, and they were all fighting one another. As I told you the other day, I told you in fun, you could trace it back to Brian Maroon. He was king of all Ireland at one time. He was a great man. Well, you take England. When I went to school, in the school books, there was a piece of poetry, Britannia rules the waves. She controlled the sea. And there was prose that the sun never went down on the British Empire, and it didn't. Today, where is she today? She's having Scotland, there's a strong movement in Scotland to establish their own, even in Wales. There's a political party in Wales that wants to establish their own government. And England is above bankrupt. She's fighting a war 8,000 miles away from home that I'm just doubtful whether she can't afford it. And they got a bad sack back yesterday. But of course, this Argentina government, according to their communists, is a Catholic country. And it's always, it's hard to understand. You take France, a Catholic country, and there's been
Did they still fight amongst themselves in your day? Like,
no, not in my day. Oh well, there was. I guess there's jealousy in all nationalities, but that is my experience. See, when I said I was only I was a young man. And there was, my relatives, my aunts, and they'd be talking of things that was going on. You see, there was, on the island then, there was a lot of school districts, Protestant school districts, wouldn't hire Catholic teachers. And they'd advertise for teacher, Protestant preferred. In our school district, there was no Catholic teacher for years and years. And then when teachers got scarce, they'd hire, and then it didn't matter. But I said to my father was in the horse business, and I said to him one day something about it. Well, he said, I'll tell you. He said, when I was 10-year-old, he said, I was hired at Thomas Maine's on the town road. And he said they were English and Protestants. I was there 8 years, and I left. I went to Colorado, and I was in a mining town, Central City in the Rockies. And he said I met all kinds, and I came home here, and since I came home, he said there's not a yard within 5 or 10 miles square here that I haven't been in. And the only ones that ever tried to do me in it was our own kind. That was my experience too.
So they found the Irish tougher on them than some of the other ones?
Well, I tell you, see, if you're associated, those that you're closely associated, that's where you get it. Somebody you don't associate with you, you don't have any much connection. But when you get it, you write in your own relatives. Well, that's typical of all races, but I think it's perhaps a little more in the Irish. No, I may be right, I may not be. But I don't think, well, people don't go on nationality now like they used to. They're not.
Mm.
They celebrate St. Patrick's. There's not the same enthusiasm or interest that they used to. Things are dying out pretty much.
Do you remember if there was any lodges up around your place, like of Irish origin? Like, I think there used to
they
be
had the DIS at Emerald. They had a hall there, and every St. Patrick's they used to have an entertainment. Well, the hall got burnt. It's not there anymore, and I don't think there's any St. Patrick's Carnival. There's always St. Patrick's entertainment all over the island, and it was a special night. And they here in Charlottetown, they put on a play, St. Patrick's.
Was your father?
Not like it used to be.
Was your father or yourself involved in the Benevolent Irish Society up there?
No. We weren't. As I told you, we were on the outskirts of the parish. Like Emerald, you see, Emerald is in our parish. It's about 6 miles from where we live. The church is kind of almost halfway.
But they were quite active, though, eh?
Oh yes, they were that. The VIS Society, but the branch in Emerald is not there at all now. See, I don't think, the only place I think it is in Charlottetown.
Do you remember, you were talking about the Irish wakes and superstitions and things. Do you remember any of them that you were told that were passed down? Superstitions or old ghost
Well,
stories?
I didn't know our family, father and mother, they didn't believe that. But there was some. Well, there were a lot of the old days. They believed in forerunners and all that sort of thing.
What kind of forerunners were they? Like I've heard a few forerunners.
Well, it's something that happened. I, just at the moment, I just can't think, because I tell you, my memory's not like it used to be. But something would happen, that was a foreigner, somebody was going to die.
I heard one that if a horse and carriage went down a lane, and then in the morning when you're coming back up, there was no tire tracks or horse tracks, that was one of the forerunners that meant that somebody was.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the black cat crossing the road ahead.
That was bad luck, was it?
Yeah. All the old people on there are telling ghost stories. You don't hear no ghost stories now. I believe there is such a thing called as a haunted house. I believe there is. I've read so much about it that I think that perhaps there may be.
Have you ever experienced anything along that line?
No.
Do you believe in forerunners? Did your family? No?
No, father and mother. But they said you're a kid, the boogeyman will get you and all this sort of thing. Sure, I'd be scared to death. It's not right. The kids today is not scared in the dark like they were in my day. There's not the superstition now that there used to be.
No. Were you ever told any stories about the elves and the leprechauns and?
Oh, I've
things
read
like
them.
that?
That never made no impression. It was a joke. All the Irish believe in fairies, that sort of thing. They tell you that. They didn't believe all they told.
But they tell it anyway. And so quick for fighting too, and besides, you never know how you're going to please them. So, that I do, you're going to do. Then I work in French that day. Irish boss, he come and say, everyone in this here trench, I know car if he is French, Anglaise, Dago, Dutch or that. Everybody must have got. Lita, Pica, green to show for the San Patricio. So, I guess some green to show for the San Patricio. By another Irishman. He's come where I am stand, and he growl at me and say, what you wearing that for, eh? Green is juice for Irishman, no for Dumbo Dago man. Take it off, he say, and why? He's punch me in the eye. Irishman, he make me see. He hadn't got it sight so quick, and so quick for fighting too, and besides, you never know how you're going to please him. So, that the deuce you're going to do. I just thought of that a little bit. More to them than that, that's the way. Would that be another one that your mother had cut out of the paper, or was that just something that was?
Well, I learned it somewhere. It was in the paper somewhere.
Would a lot of these papers come from the States, perhaps, or?
Oh, well, there was the old local paper, or there weren't so many papers or magazines in the old days as there was now. Oh, you see different.
But they did have a local paper?
I picked up something that Betsy and I made up, and they're pretty good. You can read them. Perhaps you haven't got time.
Are they Irish ones, or?
No.
You can't think of anything that was sort of unique to the Irish that wasn't besides their faith.
Well, not right offhand. Irish have their own personality and their own, a lot of it was handed down, their own customs. See, but that's pretty well a thing of the past.
Do you remember any of the customs or anything that were handed down to you?
Well, like, just at the moment, I can't think like I used to anyhow, because I'd be like that. Perhaps tomorrow or the next day I might think of something that I should have told you. First, it was Walter Shaw was deputy minister. Him and one or two others was the ones that joined that formed the Canadian Federation of Agriculture, see. And it was, but it wasn't that you didn't have individual membership. And as time went on, there was one, we used to have Farmers Week in March, and there was different organizations had a day. The Farmers Institutes used to be strong on the island, and they were a good thing, but the farmers didn't support them, and they died out. But there was a day for the Farmers Union, Farmers Institutes annual meeting. There was a day, the dairymen's meeting. There was a day the Federation of Agriculture met, see, and there was we have individual membership. Well, they tried that, but it didn't amount. But I was appointed president, I guess, for that purpose, because I had done a lot of lawful work in Kensington there. And Leo McIsaac and I took it out to the farmers and reorganized it. We argued on the strength that we'd set up a potato marketing board, because at the Farmers Week, as our meeting, the farmers were clamoring for something to be done. That the dealers were beginning to grow. They were growing 50 and 100 acres, you see. And they even suggested that acres be controlled. And anyhow, we organized, we set up a marketing board. We did. And the marketing board didn't hurt them any, but they voted it out. Farmers voted it out. Got certain voted it out. You see? And today, they're trying to organize, they're having a vote. It used to be that every farmer had a vote. See, but then they got it down. Farmers have gradually don't grow potatoes anymore, the majority. See, it's just there's 1,100 potato growers on the island. See? And when we organized the family, hardly 3,000.
And there was 7,000 a year?
Yeah, and a few years before that there was 10,000. Well, we organized the whole island, and we had over 5,000 paying dues. You see, Leo, we just got an office set up, and he got a scholarship, and he left. Lincoln Dorr come in, and Lincoln, all he did was sit in the office. It's barely in these systems now.
Do you think the farming nowadays is more uncertain than it was?
Oh, well, it's more involved. The machinery is thousands and thousands of dollars. See, there were, and some of the leaders up to this last year or so, with letters after their name, advising the farmers they weren't a farmer at all unless you were born $100, $150, or $200,000. That's rotten nonsense. See, the old people, there was a saying, which was true, was proven over the years, out of debt, out of age. See, these old things, the old people, it was handed down how to live and how to do things. And there were standard ways and there was sayings. And one particular that I was brought up with, a willful waste makes a woeful want. In my family, my father, there was nothing wasted. See, great many people, but it was those that got along, you see, those that had good sound, operating in good sound principles, and they worked. There's still some of theirs existing. There was some that didn't. They didn't last. There's old farms, there's century farms here. Back a few years ago, they gave a thing you put out of the gate. Century Farm was 100 years in the same name. Of course, there was a lot of our farm wasn't a century farm because my father was. You see, and my grandfather, his younger son got married, had no family, and they died. Somebody else owned it. Father brought me up with a love for Prince Edward Island. There was no place like it, and that's right. See, there was another thing, I think, we have the 4 seasons, it's different. I often think that those that live down in the south, near the equator, and it's the same all year round, it must be enough.
I know. I think you're just about running out of tape here anyway.